Hello everyone, Guillaume René-Sylvain here, host of the Ecommerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. So today's guest is René-Sylvain Bédard, who's back for a second time. He's the CEO of Indominus Consulting, he's a cybersecurity expert. So today's topic is cybersecurity prevention part 2, the visibility. Do you see what's happening in your network? Most people answer no. So if you were under attack or receiving malware, ransomware, whatever, until they actually trigger the effect, would you even know that you're under attack? Would you know what's happening in your network?
This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to reduce human processing errors, our company MageMontreal can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento e-commerce platform, also known as Adobe Commerce. We're among only a handful of certified companies in Canada. We do everything Magento related. If you know someone who needs design, support, training, maintenance, or a new e-commerce website, email our team at support@magemontreal.com or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com.
So this is a question that I'm throwing right away at you, René-Sylvain. Let us know more about this topic.
So basically, in order for you to know, you need to make sure that you have what we call eyes on console. So whether you're collecting data or whether you have a firewall, if you have no one looking at the result of those monitoring, they're basically worthless. You don't see what's happening. And also, if you have multiple vendors sending you data, it becomes harder and harder to be able to monitor everything. So the more technology you have, the actual more complex the analysis of this data is. We recommend setting up an actual single dashboard where all of your logs are going into. It's called an event correlation system, and it allows you to have a single dashboard to look at to know if there's anything happening, any incidents in your environment.
And who's looking at this? And is this just something for like the big companies?
So some SMBs have administrators on premise that can actually look at this and understand what's happening. For those that can't, we offer the service so that we can actually provide hands-on keyboard and reaction to those events so that people are protected.
Okay, so it's like what we see in the movies. Somebody's watching all the camera screen. If nobody's watching, what's the point of having all those cameras, unless it's to react later to the thing?
And it allows you to react within that hour 12, which is so important, right? If you have that hour 12 window and no one's looking at this in the middle of the night because everybody's asleep and there's an attack, then when you come in the next morning, the virus will have spread to various other machines.
And this hour 12 is reference to previous episode that it typically takes about an hour 12 for those kind of infection, virus, whatever, to spread throughout the company's network. And after that, well, you're kind of screwed. It's too late.
That hour 12 is your time to react. So you don't have a week, you don't have a month. They can wait a month or two before actually dropping the payload so that they'll know everything about your company. They'll know where your backups are. They'll know how much money you've made last year or how much money is in your bank account. They decide when to drop it. But if you haven't reacted in that hour 12, they're in control.
Okay, so you need someone in your company or some outsourced service that's one guy's going to monitor, I guess, a lot of companies like this by scanning all those dashboards. And let's say that I have this dashboard, I'm a large enough company to have one person assigned to security like this. What is that dashboard? What's on it? Like, how can I make sense of it? Like, do I need special training for this, or is some kind of administrative staff can keep tab on this?
So the training is to be a security analyst. So if you're in the Microsoft world, there are some certifications that you can look into to be an analyst of cybersecurity. Especially when it comes to security and compliance. Those are the categories of certifications. The dashboard's name is Sentinel, Azure Sentinel. And what it does is that it acts as a multi-layer filter. So let's say you have a million event a day. You don't want to look at a million event. It basically filters to remove the noise. And it filters down. And you have 2 to 3 incidents within a day, which basically we call it digestible, and it stops alert fatigue. When you have an alert, it's actually positive. It's something that's happening in your network, and you don't get ping, 60 times a night.
Okay. So let's say you have this dashboard monitoring. So from Azure Sentinel, either in-house or an outsourced service, okay, some kind of incident attack is happening. The timer starts, I have an hour at 12, if it's in the average speed.
Exactly.
What the hell do you do?
So the first thing we do is that we block access to the machine. So basically, that machine becomes isolated. It doesn't have access to anything anymore. And then we run what we call automated investigations onto that machine to know exactly what happened, what processes have been compromised, what files have been touched, and did it already ask other machines to participate in its network. And we actually have global visibility on that. So that way, if it, for example, if the thing, when it activated, if the malware activated, did it drop a copy of itself onto a printer? Did it copy itself on a file server? Did it manage to elaborate its network before calling home and requesting a command center?
And how reliable is it to this kind of traceability to know that it has not also dropped something in the memory of your printer of all things,
Actually, you'd be fairly impressed at how precise those are, because technology is a 1 and 0 game, right? It's binary. So if you do something, you leave a trace. And that's basically how, with event correlation, we're able to do that, because patterns of attack are now known. There are now, very distinct stages. Everything is documented, and AI behind Sentinel. We're talking about AI in the last episode. Well, Sentinel is using AI and machine learning to ensure that it gets smarter and smarter. And I'm sorry to say, but there's not many companies in the world which, as Microsoft, receive 43 billion signals per day.
No, for sure.
So when you take that and you put that into machine learning, it gets smart very fast.
Yeah, you can tap into Microsoft's immense resources and staff and skill at preparing security system when you use Microsoft Azure stuff, for sure. Okay, pretty interesting. Anything else that people should know when it comes to like monitoring their network and stuff like this? Or maybe it even might come through their website. Anything else that they should know?
It's so when it comes to their website, it's a bit more complicated, but there are patterns also that exist that allow you to, for example, stop SQL injection, stop DNS redirection. So you need to make sure that what is internet facing has been secured, and there are some alerts that are there. So if someone actually tries to change your DNS, you'll receive an alert. If somebody tries modify your database or modify your code, you'll receive an alert. Those things need to be configured. They're not there by default. But when you do, then suddenly, well, if someone adds a prefix to your domain name to sell pharmacy or drugs, on the web, well, you're told the second it comes in, and
you have an alert. Somebody created a subdomain on your web, on your domain name. Okay.
So those alerts are important when it comes to e-commerce facing, and also the other thing that needs to be monitored that can also be our own reputation is everything that has to do with comments. But it may look funny, but when you allow users to comment on a product or on a service or anything, you get all kinds of crap. And most of them are other phishing attacks trying to get your own customers to be phished through a web attack.
Right. It's a door for attacks, for entry. And it has to be properly secured. It's totally doable to properly secure it. I mean, Amazon has so many like reviews and so on, but it's for sure, it's an entry point that any hacker will try to pry if there's a crack, for sure.
Exactly. Wherever there's a crack, they'll try to go in. One last detail I would recommend is that if there is a device accessing your private data, it has to be secured. No matter if it's a personal phone to one of your staff, or if it's a phone you pay for them, or if it's a personal computer at home, if it has an access to inside your network, to your file servers, or to your database, it has to be secured properly. Because if that gets compromised, automatically the rest is gone.
Okay, and can you define what do you see as secured properly? Let's say both in the case of like an iPhone and any Android phone.
So, for example, I'll come back to the EDR that we discussed in the last episode, I would say if you can actually deploy Defender for endpoints on Androids, on Apple, and on PCs, and what that will give you is a real-time VPN. So every single piece of traffic that you're going through will be protected, and you'll also be protected against malware websites. And it will also tell you, hey, there's a new update, you need to install it now if there are any security fixes in it. It will also protect your phone against any malware. So at that point, your phone gets secure.
Okay, so you install basically the Microsoft antivirus Defender for endpoint in all of those phones, regardless if it's an Apple phone or an Android phone or whatever.
Yeah, or a Linux, or a Mac, or a PC.
So
that if it accesses your data, it has to be secure.
Okay, so Mac to everything, you should always have that antivirus installed for anything that access your data.
Yep. That EDR is key.
Okay.
And also, I mean, there used to be a time where Macs were saying, oh, we don't know viruses. Well, with malware on Linux, it doesn't exist anymore. They're a target as much as anybody else.
Okay, so that's an old stuff. If you have an Apple or an iPhone, is that more protected? Is that still true? Without necessarily being fully protected, because it's like closed source, you cannot install whatever, anything has to go through the App Store and so on.
Well, it's less and less true. I mean, there are now hackers and let's call them cyber criminal groups that have found ways to bypass the store and just install stuff directly from websites.
Okay.
So yeah, and also there are things in the Apple Store and Google Play as well that have backlinks and that download, let's say questionable data.
Okay. All right. And you were vouching here for Defender for endpoint for Microsoft. What do you think of all the other stuff that's out there, Bitdefender, Kaspersky, and whatnot?
Well, don't get me going on Kaspersky right now.
Yeah, right. It's Russian. Okay, let's forget that one. McAfee then,
Well, McAfee is an established product. It's a mature product. I consider it an enterprise product. And I'd say, sadly, it's no longer in the top of the line. When you compare McAfee with Sentinel-1, for example, which is the other EDR that's leading the process there, it's nowhere to be found. The EDR portion is what's stopping the ransomware. The antivirus of old, most of them, are late in the game. I know that Trend Micro, for example, did enter EDR a few years ago. It's going well. It's still not in the top 5, so we have to be careful then.
Okay. All right. So anything else that last shotgun question, anything else that anybody else should know about this topic?
If you're working from home, just be aware that your teenagers might be a vector for getting your machine attacked. Great users, but they don't know about cybersecurity. So there's a good deal of training to be done at home when it comes to cybersecurity, and I would start there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, René-Sylvain, for being here today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
rs.bedard@indominus.com. And we also have a free on-demand cybersecurity assessment, which I believe you'll put the URL into the description.
Will do. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.